If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. While the Warrior of Light is making her way through Limsa Mensa, a member of the Yellow Jackets who just so happens to be looking for an adventurer calls out to her. There have been some reports of a con man who's been claiming to be a blue mage, going around and selling soul crystals to adventurers for a nice chunk of money. They're supposed to give the wielder a lot of powers, but apparently it's a load of BS according to a lot of very unsatisfied customers. Magic's not really this particular Yellow Jacket's area of expertise, so she wants you to come with her and see if these crystals are actually legit. If not, she's gonna arrest the man and give you some money for your help. If they are real, then maybe the new skills that you can learn from it will be worth the trouble. Either way is a win for the Warrior of Light, so she agrees to tag along to Summerford Farms, where the man has been doing most of his selling. The two of you show up just in time to see the man give his little spiel to a group of adventurers. His name is Martin, and he claims that blue magic comes from the New World. Out in the New World, a tribe of people called the Wallaki have their own unique form of magic. It still draws ether from the land around them like black and white magic, but instead of using that ether to manipulate the elements like normal mages, they use nature in the same way that wild animals do, meaning they can use the techniques of monsters. The magic is extremely powerful, but learning it can get you killed, since blue mages have to fight said monsters and let them use the techniques so they can learn the skills. Meaning to master the art of blue magic, you have to take a serious beating. Martin got pretty good at it, and now he's ready to bring that art to Eorzea. All it takes to get started is a soul crystal, as well as a spell book that he's personally written. He's even got the outfits that'll make his pupils look the part. Even though he put on a good show, an axe-wielding woman's not convinced. She thinks he's trying to scam people, and since no one's likely to survive fighting monsters while wearing the silly blue mage costumes, no one will even live long enough to prove that Martin's a con man. Her words seem to be swaying the people, but a pair of Mamojah come charging in to attack. That gives Martin the perfect opportunity to show off his techniques to drive the beasts away, and that drives the adventurers right into his hands. Seeing him in action against real opponents, they all sign up to be blue mages. The Yellow Jacket thinks the timing of the attack was a little suspicious, so she decides to follow him to see what he does next. The two of you follow the man to the Morabi docks, where one of the guards say that he's seen Martin wandering around in the area a lot over the last few days. And he's been begging for food, which is a little weird since his blue mage scam does seem to be making a decent amount of money. That's just one more thing that he needs to be questioned about when you find him, so the two of you head to the salt strand where he was last seen. Turns out Martin and the two Mamojah who had attacked were working together, which is enough for the Yellow Jacket to charge all three of them with fraud. But Martin insists that he's not lying about the soul crystals or blue magic, even though his sales technique is a little shady. The only reason people haven't been able to make them work is, like so many people in the real world, they didn't do a little thing called reading the instructions. And while he did cut a few corners on the outfits, they are made to help maximize the potential of a blue mage. The Yellow Jacket still needs proof that the crystals work, so she asks the Warrior of Light to test them out, something she's not exactly eager to do. But Martin offers to let her borrow one of the outfits for free, so she reluctantly agrees. He has his Mamojah attempting to lure out a small kraken so you can fight it and learn the water cannon spell, just to prove that the soul crystal actually works. But the kraken that shows up is anything but small. Considering the fact that it has to shoot you with its water cannons for you to learn the technique, that makes things a little bad. Fortunately, you don't die, and you actually manage to learn the spell. The one little detail that Martin left out when he was convincing people to learn the job is that while you can become extremely powerful eventually, you start off horribly weak, which makes learning spells extremely risky and potentially fatal. While this art will likely lead to a lot of people's deaths, he's not lying, and as more proof, he'll let you keep the gear so you can be a living example of the fact that blue mages are legit. After you hit one of the Mamojah in the face with a water cannon to prove that you actually did learn the spell, the Yellow Jacket admits that Martin's not a fraud, but since he does seem to be trying to get people killed by not explaining stuff properly, she bans him from selling anything blue mage related or she will arrest him. The The loss of his revenue stream puts a dampener on his spirits, but a woman who had been following you all seems to think this blue mage thing could draw a crowd. Her name is Royce, and she runs a place called the Celestium in Ul'dah. It's an arena similar to the Colosseum, but instead of fighting people, the fighters are put against monsters. The fights are stopped before people die, usually, since her crowd tends to enjoy the fight more than watching people get murdered. The fighters wear costumes and put on a show like the WWF, but instead of shirtless men and voluptuous women duking it out in flashy ways, people are set to fight things like behemoths. Royce does well with the place, but she wants to make it known worldwide, and she thinks having blue magic being used there would do the trick. She wants Martin to be the headliner of a brand new event called the Masked Carnival, where he faces down beasts with his magic. Martin takes his blue magic seriously, and he didn't train as hard as he did just to work as a circus act, but when she tells him how much money he can make, his morals go right out the window. The thing is, Royce doesn't just want Martin, she wants you too. As new as the Warrior of Light is to blue magic, she'd end up being eaten by an overly aggressive ladybug, a fact that Martin points out, but Royce thinks you'll be fine if Martin trains you. He's not exactly interested in doing that, until Royce offers to pay him for that too. Money's clearly the most important thing to the man, so he agrees, and you all head back to Ul'dah so he can get his costume. Royce has Martin dress up like a blue pimp complete with a cane, and since his name is pretty boring, she renames him the Great Azuro, which comes complete with a backstory, a pretty simple one. He's a nobleman who decided to show off his blue magic for the Celestium. The story needs a little work, and before things are all over, she'll probably have one for you too. Ul'dah has a strict law that keeps all beast tribes out, but there was no mention of the Mamul-Ja, so they can stay in the city. Since all of that's taken care of, Royce leaves you to your training. Most of your learning will come from the creatures you fight, but to give your training a bit of direction, Martin's going to have you hunt for specific spells in between whatever other training he has for you to do. By the time the Warrior of Light comes back from learning how to drink blood like a bat, Martin's already had a few matches in the Celestium, and he has a lot of fans. Once he gets rid of them, he actually has a bit of training for you that he'll explain once you're out of the Spineless Basin. It's nothing major. There are some hornets that the locals say are pretty dangerous, and he wants you to deal with them. After you take care of the giant murder hornet, you meet back up with Martin just in time to see that this little exercise wasn't random at all. Someone had paid him to deal with the thing, and he'd pawned the work off to you disguised as training. Technically, you needed to practice your spells, so Martin doesn't see anything wrong with him making a bit of money off of you. But since you caught him in the act, he'll split the money with you. After handing over your cut, which is a little smaller than you expected, and sending you off to learn another spell, he takes you back to the basin to kill a few moles for some money. At least he told you about it up front this time. After making short work of the critters, you head back to Martin, who's been found by some men who he made the mistake of borrowing money from. He paid them back, but he forgot about this little thing called interest. Since he doesn't have the cash on him, they take his clothes, which Royce won't be happy about before leaving. Walking back to the city in his underwear doesn't seem to faze the man one bit, but Royce telling him that he has to pay for the outfit that he lost does. And his day gets even worse when a large Roganin named Washtrock that Martin seems to know very well shows up. He'd heard about the Blue Mage at the Masked Carnival, and he knew that it had to be Martin. He claims they were friends, but Martin isn't exactly being nice, so the man leaves. The two of them had been in the Arcanist Guild together, where they had studied magic from outside of Eorzea. They had gone to the New World together and learned blue magic from the Wallachie, but when they got back, the guild said that learning the blue magic wasn't practical and cut their funding. Martin didn't think it was a waste of time or money, so he paid for another trip to the Wallachie on his own, which is how he ended up in so much debt. Washtrock had decided to abandon the research since there was no money in it, despite the fact that he's possibly even better at blue magic than Martin. He quit the practice, came back to Eorzea, and started a trading company with his friends. Now he's filthy rich and Martin's a little salty about it. But that's not the Warrior of Light's problem. She's there for training, so Martin sends her off to learn another spell. You complete the task faster than Martin had expected, so he tells you to come back for your training later while he goes to handle some business of his own. While he's away, Royce comes by, and after checking on your progress, she lets you know why she really showed up. While Martin had promised her that he'd paid off the debt collectors who had stolen his costume, it turns out he's been borrowing money from a different group of hoodlums. Royce can't have him damaging the reputation of her organization, so she needs to find out what Martin's gotten himself involved in. The Mamul-Ja don't have a clue what the man's up to either, and since what he's doing affects the Warrior of Light too, she's down with following him. The two of you see him heading into the Alchemist Guild without his usual blue costume. He clearly doesn't want to be recognized, but that doesn't reveal what he's up to, so the two of you follow him out of the city where he meets up with some shady people to buy some dream flowers. Hearing that's what he's buying causes Royce to talk a little louder than she should have, which causes the two dealers to turn on Martin. You jump in and deal with them, leaving Martin safe enough for Royce to snap at for buying the plants, which are the key ingredients for Somnus. Whether he was planning on selling it or using it doesn't matter, because Royce refuses to do business with anyone who uses Somnus for anything. That's not what Martin's been doing. He's been buying the flowers to make a medicine for the Wallachie. The people there are sick with the plague, likely brought to their lands by the foreigners from Eorzea, and it's a pretty bad one. For Eorzeans, the disease is barely worse than a cold, but it's fatal to the Wallachie, and it's spreading fast. One of their doctors is doing all that he can with their particular medicines, but it's not working, and without a cure, their entire race could end up extinct. Knowing that he was a part of the problem is the reason why Martin is working so hard to help fix it, so he had come back to Eorzea to find a cure. The research put him in even more debt, but he managed to find it. The problem is it takes dream flowers to make it, and since it needs to be mass produced, he needs a lot of them. That's why he's been dealing with so many shady people and the Alchemist Guild. Royce wishes he had told her all of this from the beginning so she could have helped, but now that she knows what's going on, she'll let Martin keep performing at the Celestium, and she'll use her contacts to get the flowers for him. Martin's super grateful to the woman, but she'll call it even if he puts on a few extra shows. The crowd really likes him, and what they like, they pay for. He's all for making extra money, obviously, but she doesn't really enjoy discussing business out in the woods, so you all head back to the city. Royce's merchant friend gets his dream flowers processed before they come to Ul'dah, which lets them bypass the whole ban thing. Granted, they're still super expensive, which means Martin will have to put on even more shows to pay for them. That also means he'll have less time to train you, so he sends you off to learn another spell while he gets to work. When you make it back, the Mamojah hit you with some bad news. While you were gone, Martin got hurt pretty badly in a match. Now he's in the hospital, and that means he can't train you at all. Surprisingly enough, Washdrach shows up and offers to take over your training while Martin's incapacitated, and since he was a better student of blue magic than Martin, he's more than qualified. Even the Mamojah admit that the man is as good as he says he is, so you head out to Horizon with him to get a lesson. The man rode out there in some Garlean Magitech. Since his company does some work at a cerulean processing plant, he indirectly does a bit of work with the Empire. He'd found his not-so-little Magitech toy abandoned on the outside of Castra Meridianum, and he refurbished it so he could learn more about it. He's learned all that he can from it, so he lets you fight it as a part of your training. Even though you overpowered the thing, Washdrach still thinks the age of fighting with swords and magic is coming to an end. Battles will be won and lost in the future with technology. Eorzea is still staying primitive while the Garleans are advancing fast, and if they don't get with the times, things won't end well for them. Washdrach thinks that it won't be long before the Grand Companies start fighting with Magitech of their own, and all of that tech needs ceruleum to power it, which is part of the reason for all of the fighting in Northern Thanalan. Washdrach said all of that for the purpose of trying to get you to come and work with him, but he doesn't need your answer now. Regardless of how he feels about technology and magic, he is shocked that you got so good at blue magic with Martin as your teacher, but he knows that he can make you better than Martin ever could. Martin has no intentions of letting the man steal his student, and he shows up even though he's supposed to be in bed. Since he's finally face to face with him again, Washdrach did have a bone to pick with Martin. He'd heard about how far the man was going to help the Wallachie, which is admirable, but what he doesn't understand is why the man never came to him. They had gone their separate ways, but they didn't have any bad blood between them, and Washdrach is just as grateful to the Wallachie as Martin is. Now that Martin's hurt, he doesn't really have a choice but to accept the man's help, and he has a lot of resources, so the cure will be ready in no time. And once it's done, since Martin can't go, he'll even deliver it to the Wallachie. Martin had never thought the man would do anything that didn't turn a profit, but he could have been wrong about him. Whether Washdrach is selfish or not, you still have some training to do, so he sends you off to learn another spell while he gets some rest. During the time it takes for you to learn Glower, Martin gets a letter saying that Washdrach actually did what he said, and the Wallachie have been saved. But the celebration is short-lived because a young man named Ciata comes running up to Martin, and he's pretty frantic. The boy's the doctor from the New World who had been trying to stop the plague, and he says that while Washrock did bring the cure, he used it to take control of a place called the Lapis Canyon. It's a sacred place to the Wallachie that always glows blue because of a large deposit of ceruleum that's underneath it. That's the whole reason the man offered to help in the first place. Martin's a little ticked off, so he heads off with Seata to confront him, but since he's injured, you go with him. Washrock admits that his main goal was to get his hands on the ceruleum, but he didn't exactly steal it. He had the Wallachie sign a perfectly legal Eorzean contract, but since the elders can't read Eorzean, and Washrock said that they couldn't have the medicine if they didn't sign, he's 100% a thief. Seata points out that Eorzean laws don't apply to the Wallachie, but Washrock knows that the elders will honor it, since he had already spent a lot of money on the cure even before the negotiations had started. He tries to guilt trip the boy, but the fact remains that he took advantage of their suffering to steal something that's been at the center of their beliefs for generations. Washrock doesn't have any respect for their superstitions, and leaving the ceruleum underground because they think it's the lifeblood of the planet is a waste of resources that could be used to push the Wallachie people into the modern era. He doesn't understand or care about the fact that not everyone wants to have that life. While it may seem primitive to him, it works for their people, and since they aren't hurting anyone else by practicing their beliefs, he's totally wrong for trying to force them into things that he thinks is better, something that Martin points out. Either way, he has an investor who funded his expedition, and they'll want their money too. That investor turns out to be Royce, which makes me wonder just how rich that woman actually is. Granted, she had invested because she was interested in trading with the Wallachie, but she hadn't heard anything about a ceruleum mine, and she's not all that happy about the fact that Washrock did some shady business to trick the Wallachie people out of their property. She still thinks it'll be a good way to make some money, but not if it comes at the expense of the Wallachie. That puts her in a bit of a tight spot, so she figures that the best way to solve this problem is for Martin and Washrock to fight it out in the Celestium. Blue Mage versus Blue Mage. Washrock is fine with that, but he says quite confidently that even if Martin wasn't injured, the man would never be able to beat him. Whether that's true or not, Martin is too hurt to fight, so Royce believes that it's time for his apprentice to make her debut as Azeroth II. If you win, she'll cut off the funding for the Lapis Canyon. If Washrock wins, she wants Martin to help convince the Wallachie to go along with it. Martin doesn't really want to be a part of this, but Seata says that even in their culture, when two sides have a disagreement, they each pick a fighter and they duke it out. Normally one of the Wallachie would fight on their behalf, but since he's in Eorzea, Seata asks you to do it. Since there's no one else, the Warrior of Light agrees, so that means it's time for the most important part of this, getting your costumes ready and seeing just what Washrock is capable of. Royce of course has the Warrior of Light dress up as Azeroth, since she is playing the role of his apprentice, and after doing a demonstration of her techniques that missed the target but hit one of the Mamoja, Royce thinks she's ready. But after getting a look at Washrock's costume that has him looking like a floating demon who Royce says is a warlock called Azumagia, with powers that transcend the dimensions, the Warrior of Light may not be as ready as she thinks, especially since the man shows off some primal level blue magic. Washrock doesn't understand why he has to play the villain, but since that's his part, he'll do it well. And he definitely looks evil with the whole mask and floating thing, an effect that came pretty cheap with the ceruleum levitation device. He's so confident that he'll win that he's fine with giving you as much time as you need to train. Martin doesn't think you need any more training. He's pretty sure that the Warrior of Light is ready to face the man, so she steps into the ring to face off against Azumagia in a battle that'll determine the fate of the Wallachie people. Washrock wasn't kidding about being a powerful blue mage, but the Warrior of Light's training and him spending more time focused on making money than honing his magic abilities allows you to beat him. Everyone is happy that you won, especially since Royce honors her promise and cuts the funding for the ceruleum mine. Even though he wanted to win, Washrock isn't a sore loser, and he happily puts an end to his plans for the Lapis Canyon. Plus, the New World is a pretty big place, and he's sure that he can find another ceruleum deposit. He's going to be heading back out there in a few days on an expedition funded again by Royce, and Seata agrees to go with him as a guide to keep him away from Wallachie lands, and to show him where a few unclaimed places like Lapis Canyon might be. As for Martin, he's starting to think that since the two of you got a lot of attention as blue mages, the time is finally right for him to open a guild. But for that he'll need money, and thankfully there's plenty of that to be made in the Celestium. If there's one thing that we know about Tataru, it's that she's a businesswoman who never misses an opportunity to make money, or to punish someone for wasting hers, and she's already set up her boutique in Old Charlian, complete with an assistant named Magina, who I doubt gets paid all that much. She's happy that the Warrior of Light stopped by because Tataru is starting a new project that she could use some help with. You haven't exactly agreed, but Tataru shows up and volunteers you because that's what everyone does to the Warrior of Light. What Tataru has done is gotten together all the resources she needs to mass produce the new design she's made with guilds all around the world, but right now her clientele is limited to adventurers who pass by and whatever random Charlian decides to shop there. That's not nearly enough. She wants international business, and since the Scions prove that having the whole world work together is actually possible, she thinks building the biggest trade network ever isn't that far-fetched. But none of that will happen overnight, and it will take a lot of work, and the best way to network is by using someone who already has a lot of connections, that being the Warrior of Light, of course. Everyone knows that the Warrior of Light is an expert at picking the right gear for a job, so getting you to promote some of the samples that Tataru's made would be perfect. She claims that she'll cover all of your aetherite expenses, but I'm pretty sure we're all positive that's a lie. Lying or not, that doesn't stop her from sending you off to the first stop on this list, Limsa Lamensa. She wants you to meet up with Sakar, the leader of the Bloody Executioners. After that, she wants you to go to Gridania and get Arun Senna on board with using her clothing. Lastly, she wants you to head to Ul'dah and talk to Pippin, who's been a good friend of hers for a while and has quite a few connections of his own. And since he spends a lot of his time fighting, him and his allies could likely use her gear as well. She's already got their samples packed and ready to go, so the Warrior of Light heads off while Tataru takes care of some business of her own. Tracking down Sakar is not exactly difficult, and even though his crew has been busy with a lot of shipping jobs, he doesn't mind talking to you, as long as you're not there to tell him about any more world-ending events. Being a part of the preparations for the final days let him know just how short-sighted he had been during his pirate days, but since they've been carting the Kobol's metalworks all over the world, he feels better about what his crew is doing. And before you even have a chance to ask, he says that he'll happily promote whatever it is that you're trying to sell. Once he hears that the stuff came from Tataru and has the Warrior of Light seal of approval, he gets half a mind to sell them himself instead of advertising them for her. And since people can only get to Old Charlian by sea, he could make a killing if he gets a contract as the only person who ships Tataru's wares. That was exactly what Tataru had planned for, so since that part went exactly how she wanted, it's off to Gridania you go to get started with Phase 2. Tracking down Arun Senna takes a little bit of work since the Seed Seer's been traveling back and forth between nearby settlements a lot, but you manage to catch him when he gets back to the city. He's curious about the giant sack you're carrying around, and once he hears that Tataru has gotten clothes made with a mixture of styles from different types of craftsmen, he gets interested, especially since he's been trying to do something similar on his own, once he gets the other Seed Seer's approval, that is. Gridania, let's just say, hasn't been the most welcoming place to anyone that's not an elemental, but after seeing how much good could come from a united world, Arun Senna wants to change that. Tataru's clothes are another example of what that unity can create, so he would happily promote her company's creations while he goes on his quest to understand more of the world. He may know elementals pretty well, but his knowledge of people is pretty bad. He still has to run all of this by his sister, so he'll get back to Tataru after that, which means your work in Gridania is done, and it's off to Ul'dah you go. You find Pippin at the Colosseum, and hearing that Tataru is passing out samples of her high-quality gear falls right in line with Pippin's own plans for the Immortal Flames. After everything that he's been through, he finally understands that Rauban gave him his sword as a sign of his faith in him, and being entrusted with something so precious helps remind him of why he fights, and helps him fight harder. He thinks that every soldier of the Immortal Flames deserves weapons and armor that is more than just another tool. Their equipment should remind them of the people they're trying to protect, and it being crafted by people all across the star fits that plan perfectly. Honestly, this works out a little too well for Tataru, which makes me think the woman has spies watching all of these people so she can hear their secrets and use them to make her money. Pippin decides to wear her gear for a few fights in the Colosseum to test it out, but he's not one to take stuff for free, so he gives you a necklace that he had been planning on giving to Tataru for a while. It's extremely important to her because when she was young, her family had gone bankrupt after her dad's business had failed, and all of their possessions had been sold off to pay their debts. One of those lost possessions was her mother's necklace. Tataru has been searching for it for years but couldn't find it, but Pippin recently found it tossed in a pile of old Colosseum prizes. It's pretty badly damaged, but he figures Tataru would want it back anyway. Still, it should be restored before you give it to her, and the Warrior of Light is fine with hunting down a few gemstones to make the necklace special, so Pippin takes it to the goldsmiths to get it cleaned up before he has it shipped to Old Charlian. The package beats you there, and after you tell Magina what it is and what you plan to do with it, she's all for helping you out and helping keep it secret from Tataru. Her other employee wants to help out as well, and she thinks it'll be a good idea to get each of her new business partners to offer something to add to the necklace. That way it'll serve as a memento for both her past and her current accomplishments. That's a really good idea, but it's gonna be hard to keep it a secret if they keep talking about it right when Tataru is walking up. Fortunately, you divert her with the good news that Pippin plans on putting her gear on all of the Immortal Flames. It's a good start to her plans, but it's not the end of what she wants to do. She has more places that she wants to send you, and as for those, we'll talk about them next time. Tataru's business has been doing well, and in typical Tataru fashion, she's left some more stuff for the Warrior of Light to deliver. She would have been there to hand the Warrior of Light her orders in person, but the woman is currently out in Idleshire doing some business of her own with Rowena, Final Fantasy XIV's greediest woman. There's 2 places she wants you to take her stuff to this time. Amanalaine de Fortin has spread word of Tataru's boutique all throughout Ishgard, and some people are interested in seeing a few samples. Amanalaine will work out the details, but he's probably doing that because he wants to tag along with you to pester a very specific woman. Magina's made a little progress on that special project for Tataru while you were away too. She's gotten her hands on a very nice sapphire that she thinks will look great as a centerpiece in a necklace, once you find a few things to go along with it. She figures you'll be able to find some things on your trip, so you grab the packages and head off to Ishgard, where Amanalaine catches up to you immediately. He says he has 2 people who are extremely interested in Tataru's products, and one of them, of course, is Laniette. Amanalaine has been doing everything he could to spend time with the woman since Heavensward, and he still hasn't caught on to the fact that she's just not that into him. One day she's gonna throw him off of one of those floating islands, but none of that's the Warrior of Light's problem as long as the woman takes Tataru's samples first. Laniette's always happy to see you since she knows how busy you are, and you actually showed up at the perfect time. The relations with the Vanu Vanu have been getting better over time, but some recent events have caused them to have to rethink where they deploy their weapons. Before she can tell you what those events are, Amanalaine comes running up dressed like a warrior trying to impress the woman. He says that Sicard gave him some of Tataru's gear, probably because he knew the man would use them to make a fool out of himself in front of the woman. Since Laniette is a soldier, she's not exactly happy that the man is wasting good armor that could be used to protect actual warriors, and she wants him to take it off and give it back to Sicard so he can deliver it to someone who can actually use it. Well, it turns out that he lied about Sicard giving him a sample of the gear in the first place, and he'd actually stolen it from the man, which is doubly stupid since Sicard is a pirate who is prone to shooting people. Since the 2 of them are friends, he'll probably shoot him in somewhere like the leg, but Laniette hopes that Amanalaine isn't that unprofessional with the other potential clients he's supposedly found for Tataru. He hasn't been even remotely unprofessional with them because those clients are the Red Bill Sky Pirates, and Leofard wouldn't just shoot him in the leg for messing with him. Laniette's shocked that the man even knows the Red Bills since they don't exactly travel in the same social circles, but his house has a wide range of contacts, including the pirates. Ironically enough, Sky Pirates were the problem that Laniette was getting ready to tell you about. Some pirates have been attacking trading vessels, and they've even robbed the Skysteel manufactory in Ishgard. It's unlikely that Leofard's crew is behind the thefts, but the Warrior of Light and Amanalaine head to the Red Bill's base to see if they know anything about it. Your old friends are happy to see that you're still alive and well after the whole saving the star thing, but even Leofard knows that fighting monsters isn't nearly as hard as merchant work. What he doesn't know is how you managed to get yourself roped into it, but it does work to his advantage, since the main reason he was interested in Tataru's wares was because it would bring you to him. That's not the only reason, because he still wants the stuff, but he did want to see you. He has a job that could benefit from both your skills and Tataru's very high quality equipment. He's willing to pay you for your help, of course, so the Warrior of Light agrees to join him on the job if he gives some parts for Tataru's necklace in exchange. Since you're all in, he leaves the explaining to Stacia. A group of thieves have been pretending to be sky pirates and have been robbing traders in the area. They call themselves the Monstrous Cockatoos, which sounds wrong in every way you can imagine. And other than giving the pirates a bad name, they made things personal by stealing the parts that the Red Bills had got to build the replacement for the Ramil, Leofard's airship that got destroyed in the fight with Diabolos. Once they had realized they'd robbed the Red Bills, they ran off to Idleshire to hide after stashing the stuff somewhere. The plan is to go to Idleshire and find them, and beat them up until they tell you where the stuff is. Since the Red Bills plan on dealing with the criminals, Amanda Lane heads off to let Laniat know what's going on so she can be ready to arrest the thieves once Leofard's done beating on them. The pirate had never expected to team up with the Knights, but he doesn't really care as long as he gets his stuff back, so you all head off on your second, much less dangerous mission with the Red Bills. Since he's pretty well known, Leofard swaps into some of Tataru's clothes, which he does admit are pretty comfortable, before he lets you know what your part in the plan is going to be. The fake pirates have been doing a good job of hiding, so Leofard wants to spread some rumors about a black market merchant who's trying to buy some very fine, not necessarily legal items, while Leofard follows you around and plays the role of your bodyguard. Since peddlers and adventurers talk a lot, they might be able to point you in the right direction. They have a disguise for you too, since it's not like people wouldn't recognize the Warrior of Light, so you get changed, and then you and Leofard head off. Some of the adventurers you talk to are nice enough to warn you that trying to find sky pirates while looking like you have money is a good way to get robbed. But since that's the entire goal, you keep doing what you're doing. It doesn't take long for you all to reach the top of the rumor mill, right alongside news about some big shot who started working with the fake pirates. Whoever the person is, Leofard's not worried, and since word of your money is spreading, the two of you walk around town until the cockatoos find you. It doesn't take them long to track you down, but almost all of their arrogance leaves when they realize that they've come face to face with Leofard. Almost all of it. See, they've partnered up with someone even more dangerous than Leofard, and that person turns out to be Rodlia and the Talons, a much more brutal group of sky pirates than the Red Bills. Her and Leofard have been competitors long before the little Void Ark expedition, but she'll forget their differences if he joins her crew. She'll even give him back his ship parts. Obviously, he'd never join her, but he doesn't plan on leaving without the parts, as long as the thieves haven't damaged them by leaving them in wind-aspected territory, which unfortunately it seems like they did. According to Leofard, they had some specialized corrupted crystals in them that would have been made useless if they came in contact with wind sprites. Rodlia gives the cockatoos a look that says they're dead if they damage the stuff, but the pirate says there aren't many wind sprites on Providence Hill, so it'll be fine. The things would have been fine regardless, since everything Leofard said was made up. He just wanted them to say where they had put his stuff so he could send Utata to go and get it. He's kinda surprised that Rodlia didn't know he was bluffing, since any airship that had parts that couldn't handle the wind would be extremely useless. Since bribing him is off the table, Rodlia decides to resort to beating Leofard until he submits, which could have worked, which is why he brought the Warrior of Light along. Once she reveals herself, the cockatoos do the only thing that they can, and that's run for their lives. Since dealing with the cockatoos turned out to be a waste of time, Rodlia decides that she'll deal with Leofard another day, so she takes her talons and leaves, but she'll obviously cause problems later. But since everything's been taken care of, it's back to the Red Bills base you go. Utata manages to get all of the airship parts back, so it won't be long before Leofard's ship is finally ready, and the cockatoos have been taken into custody, so that little problem's been dealt with too. Leofard's not a thief, so all of the other stolen goods should end up back where they're supposed to, which means your work is done. Surprisingly enough, Tataru shows up with an old Ellison, and she's as surprised to see you as you are to see her. She had been in Idleshire at the same time that you were there, and Leofard had hunted her down since she seems to have connections everywhere. He was looking for someone specific, and Tataru was able to find the man. The Ellison's name is Duramert, and he's a famous painter. A lot of the items that had been stolen were incredible paintings, all done by him. But Leofard wanted him for more than just to return his property, since he was the one that had painted the portrait of Ramil that Leofard has on his wall. And the woman also just so happened to be his daughter, so technically that makes Duramert Leofard's grandfather since his daughter had adopted the boy. The man was also a lord, but he gave up his title to his son when he started painting full time. In other words, the man has led a busy life. He's always been hard to track down, but Leofard wanted him there to see the new ship that he's dedicated to Ramil fly for the first time. Something that the man wouldn't miss for the world, since he's just as proud of the man Leofard has become as his daughter would have been. With the ship done, you all fly out to test it. While it was great hanging out with the Red Bills again, they head off on another adventure, but they promise that if Tataru needs them to deal with any more criminals, they'll come back. Tataru's not one to take a break, and she has some business to take care of in Ishgard with the painter. Since you're someone who's been around a bit, the painter wants you to come with him and to tell him about the adventures you've been on with Leofard, who flies by and tosses the promised gift for Tataru out of his ship for you. After chatting with the painter, he decides to hang out in Ishgard for a while to paint, so the Warrior of Light heads back to Sharlayan, where Magina examines Leofard's gift, which turns out to be a relic from the city of Ma'ak. It's a magic-imbued leather strap that's supposedly unbreakable, which will be perfect for Tataru's necklace, but you'll still need to add more to it in the future. And since Tataru will definitely call on you again, you'll have plenty of time to hunt down more stuff. Tataru's business has grown quite a bit thanks to your help, of course, and as to be expected, Magina could use your help again. Since the business has been growing, it's gotten the attention of a foreign merchant who dropped by and made a business proposition. That particular merchant was Hancock from the East Aldenar Trading Company, and since both you and Tataru know the man and his shady business practices well, Magina's already been told that he can't be trusted at all. But if you own a business, sometimes to grow you'll have to deal with some unsavory individuals, and Hancock's knowledge of the Hingan markets is exactly what Tataru needs if she wants to expand her business into the Far East. Because of that, she's decided to negotiate with him, but for some reason he wants the Warrior of Light to show up at the meeting in Kugane. Since it's to help Tataru, you agree to go. Plus, it's the only way you'll be able to get more parts for Tataru's necklace. Because no one respects the Warrior of Light's time, you actually have to wait for Tataru and Hancock to show up. Once they get there, Tataru wants to know exactly why Hancock demanded the Warrior of Light come to the meeting, because he's clearly plotting something. Of course he is, but he'll tell you about it after he lets you hear his business proposition. His company recently opened a clothing shop in Kugane, but the locals aren't really liking their designs. The plan was to promote the work of some weavers from Ul'dah, but the place has a different culture from Kugane, and a part of that is a completely different fashion sense. So Hancock decided to switch things up and make traditional Hingan clothes, but with the silks from Ul'dah. But that plan fell through when Hancock's crafter got sick. He thought about giving up, then he remembered Tataru's boutique and the fact that she's made clothes that fit the Eastern style, namely the samurai and ninja armor sets. Hancock figures that if the East Aldenar Trading Company puts her gear on display, it will show the people that the Western traders can make clothes that the locals like. And since Hancock heard that Tataru wants to get her business up and running in the East, he figured that a deal would work out for both of them. Tataru's interested, which means there's some things to talk about, but what she doesn't understand is why Hancock wanted the Warrior of Light. He actually didn't want you for anything dealing with the business, at least not directly. He ran into the Four Lords, and I have no idea how you just run into four gods by accident, but when he saw them they wanted to get in touch with you. And since getting an IOU from the Four Lords could be very useful, he said he would track you down. He's not stupid. He knew that any request sent by the East Aldenar Trading Company would be looked at sideways by the Warrior of Light if she didn't just throw it in the trash. So Hancock just lied and said that he needed you to help with Tataru because he's well aware of how willing you are to help your friends without question. He does plan on paying you a nice amount for your help, and he's already let the Four Lords know that you were on your way to the area. They want you to meet them in Sakazuki when you get the chance, and since they say it's an urgent matter, you head off while Tataru handles the dangerous task of negotiating with Hancock. Soroban, Seiryu, Suzaku, and Byakuya all show up to see you, and after Soroban complains a bit about the torturous training he's been put through by Genbu's spirit, a spirit that's still living inside of him, you all start to talk about what they really wanted to tell you about. While sneaking around in Kugane, an auspice saw a man dressed like Tenzin and going around claiming to be Tenzin's long-lost descendant. He was using Tenzin's name to sell fake lucky charms, and the lords, especially Suzaku, are not happy about it. She wants to burn the man alive, soul and all, and Seiryu wants to do even worse to him, especially since he claims to have the Four Lords on speed dial. While it's all very disrespectful, Genbu doesn't think things have reached the burned alive level just yet, but it does need to be put to a stop. They haven't exactly dealt with people on a regular basis, so they don't know how to deal with the imposter without permanently dealing with the imposter. That's why they called on you. They want you to find another way to deal with the man, but to do that you need to find him, and the lords want to tag along. Granted, if they came in their normal forms, they would cause people to panic. They don't exactly fit in, but they have the power to change their shape to make themselves less conspicuous, and because they don't know what stealthy actually means, they turn human-sized then put on rabbit and chicken costumes like that won't make people notice them. Soroban doesn't think the disguises will work since they're just stupid, but Byakuya says that they couldn't just turn into human form because some people have the power to see through that trick, and that will lead to a lot of problems, so the horrible costumes will have to do. It's not hard to find the con man. He has a whole crowd of people around him, and he is wearing a replica of Tenzin's armor that isn't exactly that hard to come by. He claims to also have Tenzin's flaming sword, the Phoenix Blade, which is an outright lie since the Four Lords have kept the blade in the temple since Tenzin died. Some of the people aren't buying it, so the imposter calls on his four lords, which is a red Kojin, a regular woman, an Aura man, and a house cat. The only part of this insane display that Byaku's actually mad about is the fact that the Tenzin impersonator didn't at least hire a cat boy to play him. The audience thinks it's dumb too, but they believe the lie sort of when the man says that they're hiding their normal form. Granted, some people think the lords would have chosen to look a little less stupid on their public outings, but even Soroban sees that the impersonator made his four lords look less ridiculous than the real ones decided to dress. The whole display is making the real lords move closer and closer to just killing the man, but one person in the crowd mentions the fact that there was no mention of Tenzin even having a kid before he died, so he can't possibly be his descendant. The imposter has an answer for that too. He claims that Suzaku actually had a kid for Tenzin, and her reaction to that comment proves that whether she had a kid for Tenzin or not, they definitely touched naughty bits a time or two. That is all the crowd needs to hear to decide to buy the man's charms, and it also makes the real four lords decide to scare the imposter straight so he'll never slander their names again. But since none of the lords plan on taking the easy route of dragging the con man to the bottom of the ocean without your handy little underwater breathing blessing, you'll have to find a clever way to expose the man's lies. Since he was quick on his feet when it came to countering people's arguments, that might be a challenge. But of course, the easiest solution is oftentimes the best one, so everyone opts for just revealing that they are the four lords, with the Warrior of Light claiming to be Tenzin's actual descendant, since she is in a way. He'll definitely confess when he sees that, so Byaku and Soroban head back to the temple to retrieve some things, while the Warrior of Light, Suzaku, and Seiryu go to track the imposter down. Some people saw him heading to a bridge in the city, and when you get there, a man did see him pass, and he still can't believe there are so many people who actually believe that man is really Tenzin's descendant. He has no idea where he went, but your old and definitely not friend Namazu Gyoto sees you. He knows exactly who you're talking about, and he gives you a name probably so Lise won't kick him again. The Tenzin impersonator's name is Ishu, but he's not the mastermind behind this little scheme. That honor falls to a man who you've dealt with a time or two, Kageyama. His hands are always in something unsavory. Last time he tried to block trade with Uda because he didn't want to deal with foreign merchant competition, and he did it in a way that should have gotten him killed. I'll link that story in the description so you can check it out later. It turns out Ishu is a very skilled weaver who was really focused on his craft, which makes it odd that he partnered up with Kageyama. Gyoto knows where the pair meet up, and he's willing to share that info for a little bit of money. The four lords are super rich, and they're fine with giving him some money if he heads to their temple. They don't make the place sound all that inviting, but Gyoto's not all that smart, so he doesn't care. He's still going, but he does keep his word and let you all know that they're meeting on the Isle of Beko. So you don't miss the meeting, Suzaku sends a messenger to the temple to tell Byaku and Soroban where you're headed, and the three of you head off to the Isle. You all spot the pair, and it immediately becomes clear that Ishu isn't scamming people of his own free will. He's genuinely terrified of what the four lords will do to him if they ever get word of what he's been up to, but Kageyama won't let him quit. He gave the man work after he lost his job, which kept his family from being homeless, and because of the debt he owes, if Ishu quits, Kageyama will make sure that everyone knows about the scam, which will make sure that Ishu never gets another job. The man is trapped, and Kageyama knows it. What he doesn't realize is that Seiryu, Suzaku, and the Warrior of Light all heard who the true criminal is, and now they know who to punish. You all charge out and reveal yourselves, and once Soroban and Byaku show up, they toss the Warrior of Light the real Phoenix Blade and reveal themselves in a way that would make absolutely anybody wet themselves. Seeing you holding the Phoenix Blade with the real four lords, who are all powered up like they're getting ready to attack, makes Kageyama beg for his life and run away while promising to never take any of your names in vain again. Ishu wasn't scared in the least. He actually seemed excited to see the lords in the flesh, and the whole incident reminded Byaku of the time where Tenzin made him pretend to be a wild animal to run a lot of people out of a doomed village. He thinks your acting is way better than Tenzin's, which made the whole thing a lot of fun. Ishu apologizes for his part in all of this, but since they know why he did it, and they've all made bad decisions of their own in their life, the lord's forgiven. And since he is nearly a master at sewing, Soroban gets an idea. However, what he's planning isn't something that the other lords are all that interested in, so they get ready to head back to the temple. But before they leave, they do want to know what Ishu will do now that he doesn't have to play Tenzin anymore. Even though he was being forced to scam people, he does plan on confessing to the Sekisegumi when he gets back to Kugane, which will get him a bit of jail time, but after that he'll take his trade up again and work to pay back everyone he scammed. That's good, noble, and stupid. He should be putting all of the blame on Kageyama since he forced him to do it, but lucky for him, Sorbonne's already called Hancock and Tataru. The man needed someone to make his clothes, and he's more than willing to hire Ishu right away, and he's already talked to the Sekisegumi about the situation. Ishu won't have to go to jail as long as he helps them bring down Kageyama. That's a deal the man is more than happy with, and with Hancock being a man of his word once you get him to give it, he hasn't forgotten about the Warrior of Light's payment. She wants something for Tataru's necklace, which he's more than happy to provide. Everything's been solved, but Tataru does want to know why the Four Lords called on Hancock instead of her when they needed help, since she was involved with the whole Koryu incident. Genbu figured that she was busy, and since she couldn't exactly fight, she might not have been able to help out all that much. But it all worked out well in the end, so they head home while the rest of you do the same. Ishu gets started with his work immediately, and after he gives you the last outfit he made before his involuntary servitude started, as well as the item Hancock promised, Tataru lets you know that she and Hancock made a deal, and from this day onward the two of them will be working together in Kugane, and she wants you to let Megina know the details. When you tell the woman about the deal, she's not surprised, but she is surprised that Hancock sent a very rare black pearl to be a part of Tataru's necklace. She knew he was rich, but she didn't know he was that rich, and working with Tataru, that means he'll only get richer. Tataru apparently ended up telling Megina how the Warrior of Light helped free Worlet alongside Gaius, which made the woman decide that you're the perfect person to help out with her next mission. Tataru's boutique is about to send some samples of their military equipment to Worlet's temporary government, and since Gaius is the man running things over there, you would be the perfect person to bring the gear to him and convince him that it's worth buying. It has been a while since the Warrior of Light has checked on the people of Turncliffe, so she's fine heading over there. Plus, it'll give her the chance to look for another item to put on Tataru's necklace. Gaius was not expecting to see you, but you showed up right in the middle of a situation that's a little more important than getting new gear for the army. Somebody stole the G-Savior Mark II, which is no small feat since the thing is a massive Gundam hooked to a large platform. There was a witness, and Gaius was just on his way to talk to her. Since you're there, he wouldn't mind having you tag along. The witness is Avelina, and while she was doing some work on the Mark I, she saw a very suspicious looking man moving around the Mark II. She confronted him, but when he turned around it was Valence Vanvaro, which is very impossible because no one can survive getting squeezed until they pop by the diamond weapon before getting yeeted to oblivion. He is very dead, but Avelina saw what she saw. Turns out she wasn't the only one to see the dead man either. Some of the children who had been Valence's former prisoners had saw the man too. He came to them and he told them to tell him where the G-Warrior was. They had found it while wandering in places that they weren't supposed to be, so they told him, mainly because they're scared of the man, and for good reason. Gaius doesn't blame them, but he's not convinced that Valence has come back from the dead. However, whoever took the Mark II is a problem, and Gaius wouldn't mind having your help with the hunt. You're all for it, since joining the chase means that you get to pilot the Mark I again. Once you're on board, Gaius sets the autopilot to head toward Garlemald. He doesn't think the thief is really Valence, but if it is him or somebody pretending to be, then he's likely taking the Mark II to use it to take over Garlemald, since that was what Valence had wanted the diamond weapon for. Gaius wants you to use the G-Warrior to stop the man. He'd do it himself, but he's not too proud to admit that you're a better pilot than he is. When the sensors pick up the Mark II, it proves that Gaius guessed right. Normally he'd just have you shoot the thing down, but if you blow up the Mark II, there won't be any way to identify the body, and he wants to know who the thief is. That means you'll have to get close and take out the engines. At least that would be the only way under normal circumstances. Nero has a better idea, and he hacks into you and Gaius' conversation to tell you a better way to deal with the situation. This is the first time Gaius has seen Nero since the whole Ultima weapon incident, but he'd heard how Nero had joined the Ironworks and works under Sid. Nero only sort of works under the man since most of the time he's stealing the man's money and doing his own thing with it. And one of his little pet projects that Sid knew nothing about was building a weapon he calls the Anti-G that was made for the sole purpose of taking down the G-Warrior. He had figured someone would steal one of Sid's toys, and he had built the thing for that occasion. I'm pretty sure he made the weapon because he planned on stealing one of the Gundams, and he would have used it to shoot down whichever one he didn't take when Sid came after him. He loaded it on your ship before you headed out, and he wants you to use it to prove that what he made is better than what Sid made. Nero's anti-G missiles knock out the propulsion systems on the Mark II, but what they didn't plan for was the pilot detaching from the containment unit and flying off. The Warrior of Light's not willing to let the guy get away, so she detaches the Mark I and proceeds to knock the man out of the sky, which makes him crash down in the same spot where the diamond weapon had crashed when you fought it. The man who crawls out of the ruined Mark II does look like Valens, but when Gaius knocks his visor off, his eyes are very different. The man keeps up the lie that he's actually Valens until he realizes that Gaius is gonna kill him. Then he admits that his name is Procopius, and he served under Valens. He was so devoted to the man that he bought a Fantasia potion off the Mog station so he could look like him and serve as a decoy for any assassins who tried to kill the guy. He had stolen the Mark II so he could use it to help the people of Garlemald go back to their glory days and get back to conquering the world, since only Garleans are fit to rule. He's just as crazy as Valens, so Gaius knocks him out. He should have just killed him, but he's being soft for some reason. Either way, you've gotten the Mark II back, so you all head back to Turncliffe. Since the other work is done, Gaius wants to know why you of all people are delivering clothes. The fact that you're willing to advertise the stuff is enough for him to trust the quality. But after you tell him how persuasive Tataru can be, he plans on being on guard when he starts talking prices with the woman. That was all you really came there to do. But before you head back, Gaius wants you to go and let the kids know that Valens is well and truly dead. Soothing the nerves of the kids is a worthy mission, so you head off to handle it. When you tell them about the fake Valens, they're happy to know that it's really all over, but they think it's a good idea to not tell Allie about what happened. They've all heard about the terrible stuff that Valens did to her and they don't want to dredge up old memories. She's already been depressed enough as it is. They had an idea about how to make her feel better about life in general, but they'll need your help because of course they will. Allie wants a portrait of her family and they want to have one painted for her, but other than Gaius, all of her family's dead. However, Avelina has an idea that she thinks will solve that problem, at least for the painting. The kids go off to get the painter while you go and collect Gaius and his daughter. He's fine with doing anything that helps his daughter, and even though Allie doesn't really want to do a family portrait without her siblings, since the kids ask, she's willing to pose with her father for her. Avelina's idea for getting Allie's siblings into the picture was pretty smart. She gets the core of the diamond weapon that had the minds of Allie's siblings stored inside of it, and she uses it to summon them for the painting that turns out pretty good. The kids got you something for helping out too. It's a pink seashell that Magina says is actually very rare. And by rare, she means expensive, so it'll be perfect for Tataru's necklace. But she probably won't even be thinking about the necklace since her mind is definitely on all of the money she's gonna make once the deal with Gaius is finished. With all of the work the Warrior of Light has done for Tataru's business, people have been ordering her products like crazy. In other words, Tataru's about to be super rich, and her employees from Thavnir have become super busy. Some of them, like Hasdad, have been working behind the scenes doing things like shipping products and stuff, so it's not all that often that you'll see him around the shop. And it's gotten worse for the staff since the business is doing so well. Some of the employees do think that the rise of business may not be the best thing, since Tataru's products are built to last, which means once people buy them, there's really no reason to come back. That kind of thinking shows why Tataru's in charge, because she undoubtedly has some ideas on how to keep her old customers happy. Since she's been getting to watch Tataru work up close and personal, Magina thinks that she's come up with a few ideas of her own. She wants to make new uniforms for the researchers around Sharlayan, and she told Tataru about this potentially untapped market. But the Lalafell wasn't all that excited about the idea. She told Magina to do some more research and tell her what she finds out about this whole new market, but the shy woman has been procrastinating a bit. Plus, random people can't just go around Sharlayan questioning people, since the place doesn't really give people free reign to do whatever they want when they feel like it. They wouldn't even let her into Labyrinthos at all, so she decided that the Studium would be the best place to talk to some of the researchers. She set up an appointment, but she's scared to go, so the Warrior of Light, who is never too busy to do unpaid labor, agrees to go with her, and Hasdad comes along so he can figure out what supplies he'll have to get to make this new batch of gear. It only takes a little bit of conversation with a few people to realize why Tataru never bothered trying to make products for the researchers. There are so many different fields of study and each one has unique wants and needs, so there's no one-size-fits-all bit of Studium gear that can be made, so it'll take way too much time and effort to make gear that'll only work for a handful of people, which means there's no profit in it, and if there's no profit, Tataru won't do it. Magina's kinda bummed that the idea didn't work, but Hasdad's pretty sure that Tataru told her to look into it so she can understand what it means to fail something. That's also something that the Hanish people's religion always taught them. Hardship builds character, and that type of thinking is what got them through the final days. The fact that she hadn't even thought about applying the teachings from her own religion since she's been surrounded by all of these different cultures of Sharlayan bothers Magina a bit. It's like she's been losing a part of herself ever since she left home. Hasdod feels the same way, and he thinks it may be time for them to go back to Thavnir. They've been sending money back home to help rebuild after all of the damage that came from the final days, but that's not a real substitute for being there and helping their people in person. Since it's really bothering them, they decide to talk to Tataru about it. When Megina tells Tataru about her failed mission, it turns out that the whole mission was in fact an experiment to let the woman see what it feels like to fail. That way she can build a better business mind in the future. As for their homesickness, Tataru understands, and she doesn't feel like they're betraying her by wanting to go home. Turns out she's sending stuff to Palakistan anyway, so that'll be the perfect opportunity for the two of them to go home and decide whether or not they want to stay for good or come back and work. Of course she wants you to handle the delivery because of course she would use you to do work whenever you're around. So the three of you hop back over to Thavnir after you all check on the progress of Tataru's secret gift. With all of the stuff you collected on your trips, all that's left to do is to get the thing put together, and it should be done by the time you all get back. When you get to Razat Han, Megina and Hasdod take a bit of time to walk around the city before you all head back to their village. The elder is happy to see them and to hear how well they've been treated. Hasdod's happy to see that stuff hasn't changed all that much since he's been gone, and his worries about coming home and feeling out of place didn't come true. He did feel guilty for abandoning his people, but the elder said that he should have never felt like he abandoned them by going away, especially since he keeps sending them money. In all honesty, him being there in person wouldn't have helped all that much, since there's really no hope of restoring the village. Too many people died during the final days for it to ever go back to the old days. They have to all grow and change, but they don't really know what they can become. Their original purpose had been to maintain their holy sites around Thavnir, but they realized when stuff got bad that they weren't really equipped for that. But they do have traditions that they have to keep relevant and pass on, so they have to figure out how to do that in this post-final days world. Most of the villagers are also craftsmen, and with their skill, unique style, and having so many of their people spread around the world after they fled during the final days, Megina, putting some of Tataru's business training to work, comes up with a plan to get the people of Palakistan partnered with Tataru's shop. If they could use their connections to sell Hanish amulets around the world, they could bring a steady source of income to the village and get things to their people that'll remind them of their home and heritage no matter where they are. It's a good idea if Tataru approves of it, so you all head back to Charlian to see if the woman likes it enough to sign off on it. When you make it back to the city, the necklace is ready, so you all head off to meet Tataru to give her a gift and to hit her with Megina's idea. She thinks the idea is a great way to expand her business, which means it can make her money, so it's perfect. And since the trip helped them get over their homesickness, Megina and Hasdod are ready to get back to work after you all give Tataru a gift. When she sees that it's her mother's gemstone, she's super excited since she thought she'd never see it again. It was part of a family heirloom that her grandmother had given to her mother on her wedding day, and one that her mother had been planning on giving to her. But when her dad's business went under, they had lost that along with everything else. Losing everything had ended up being the best thing that could have ever happened to her, because it made her take a job that had her meet a young miner named Menphilia, who invited her to join the Path of the 12, which eventually led to all of the adventures that she's been on with you and the Scions. And just because you're heading off to the other side of the world doesn't mean your days of adventuring together are over, because she plans on using you again when she inevitably expands her business to the new world. This concludes the story of Tataru's grand endeavor. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share it, and subscribe. Donate to the channel if you can, and I'll see you all next time.